And we're live now. Well, good evening to everyone. Welcome to my autism YouTube channel. It's autistic where I do sports content. No, no sports content, autism content, and also do lives or interviews with autistic people, and also autism content creators, or and also mothers with kids with autism. And today, my guest is Bekkah, who's on TikTok as Autism Bekkah, very who has a very good autism content, very good autism content. And before we start this, let me remind you that my guest here is a lady, is a woman, so I suggest that you watch your words, you manage yourself with respect at all times, because if you don't, you're going to be blocked. So let's start this now. So Bekkah, welcome to my space, welcome to my channel. A pleasure and so good to have you here. How are you?
Thank you. And that was so kind. Thank you so much. I'm very good. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on your channel today.
No, thank you for accepting, and the pleasure is mine. So anyway, so tell me how old, how old you were when you were diagnosed with autism.
I was officially diagnosed at the age of 36, but when my youngest son was diagnosed in my early 20s, his specialist noticed some of my autistic traits and suggested that I get looked at. I was not quite ready for that yet, and it took 10 years of acceptance and research and finding a doctor to take me seriously. And finally, I became a late diagnosed autistic.
Okay. Well, my case was different since I was diagnosed when I was little. When I was little, when I was like two. So so then, uh, now that you look back, what kind of signs that probably were signs that could indicate that yeah, you had autism, like for example like STEAM, special interests. Now you look back, what kind of signs could indicate you that you had it?
When I was younger, I like to watch the same movies and things over and over. I played and collected with like the same toys, like Polly Pockets and Tamagotchis. I had just unrealistically large collections of those things, and I didn't like to play with them like other kids would. Like I like to um, play with them in a very specific way and put them away in a specific way. Like I was very organized. And I also experienced a lot of age regression because I was a physically ill kid as well. I went through like a lot of pneumonia and bronchitis and stuff. And after I would be done being sick, I would experience age regression and other things. I also like to spin and rock, and you'll see me on here rocking and swinging around. So I've always been like stimming kind of in that way. But as a girl here, growing up, we are expected to kind of keep to ourselves and put on a happy face. And I started masking at a very young age and learned to, like, despite my issues with speaking and mutism, I learned to, like, force myself to speak and force myself to make eye contact. And so yeah, just growing up, it was kind of tough, and I feel like it was very noticeable even then. But back in those days, it really wasn't like a girl's issue. Like it wasn't a girl's disability. It was mainly diagnosed in boys. And so a lot of girls got overlooked, and I was one of them.
Well, okay, very interesting. Very much. I could tell, probably could tell this tell you the same thing because when you ever remember that Nintendo 64? Well,
Yes, I do.
I used to love playing a lot that games that NBA Showtime. That was one of my first, and that Tony Hawk Pro Skater. But I like that probably the NBA Hangtime and the NBA Showtime because you like to watch all the guys fly like 1,000 meters to then to score a dunk. I mean, I like that also.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So tell me, how how do you deal with your diagnosis and how your surroundings like react to it? When I say surroundings, I mean your family, friends. How do you react? How do you react, and how do you deal with it?
So my diagnosis, my diagnosis actually came after my children were diagnosed. So I feel like personally, I feel like it shouldn't have been a surprise. And to any of my neurodivergent friends, it was not a surprise when I came out that I was autistic. But to like my family and people, like some people who had known me for a long, long time, it was almost like a devastating surprise to them, and I felt kind of sad, and I was kind of lonely after my diagnosis. I mean, part of getting diagnosed late is going through like an acceptance and grieving process. And I think that's true for those who are around you when you're an adult. It's just a very surprising thing at this time that, and I don't know why because it happens so often, but when you're diagnosed as an autistic or neurodivergent in any other way late in life, it's just like, people question that and they wonder, how you could have been missed. And they also wonder, like, well, hey, if you're autistic, I must be autistic too. And so I had a lot of all of that going on. A lot of people like questioning if they were neurodivergent as well and discovering themselves. And then I had a lot of people in denial because I'm a lot like them. And if I'm autistic, they must be. And that's like a big, you know, that's a big thing to be shown in your just to be shown and to think about and consider. And so it was really hard when I first got diagnosed. I didn't have as much support, but I was very lucky to have a wonderful psychologist and or psychiatrist and medical team to support me, and some family members and best friends to help me through that early process.
Wow, very wow, Yuri. Wow, okay. Can you believe I didn't talk that much about it with my family?
Really? Even as a kid?
No, I didn't talk about. We didn't talk about it that much.
That surprises me, actually.
No,
Um,
yeah, I can see you. I can see you. No, I didn't.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Pretty much no. I didn't talk that much about it. I really didn't talk much about it. Pretty much a little while ago, I talked to it to a friend of mine who's been my friend. We went to high school together. One of my best friends for 20 years, and it's like, well, it couldn't be seen because the behaviors probably the behavior, special interests, and all that stuff. So anyway, now let's talk about your time in school as an autistic person. Were you ever like bullied? And if you want to, you can tell some experiences and anecdotes so people can have an idea what it's like to be an autistic person being bullied at school. You can tell.
Sure, sure. So growing up, I was high masking, which means I tried really hard to hide my autistic traits, and I tried really hard to fit in with everybody around me, especially the girls. I really just wanted to be, friends with everybody, and that was really difficult. Going into middle school, like elementary school, wasn't. I don't remember a whole lot of bullying or anything, but once you get into middle school and high school, it's a different animal. People,
Mm-hmm.
are going through puberty and changes and emotional changes, and we're finding our cliques, our groups. And that really messed me up because a lot of my friends that I expected from elementary school to continue being my friends in middle school when we made that move, found their own groups, and I didn't understand, why I was left out or left behind. So it was middle school was like the big change and a whole nother animal. I mean, starting off kind of easy. I've got a lot of experiences written down, starting from like basic, easy PG stuff all the way up to like some really difficult times. But I would say like in general, I was teased a lot. I would get my things stolen or broken all the time,
Wow.
and I was also considered like a tattletale or like a big crier because I couldn't control my emotions. I don't know if you ever experienced any of those things in school. Um, but yeah, that was like the biggest thing for me. Um, and like I said, I was the crier type. I still am. I will just just to get my emotions out. And as an autistic, we feel things like so much more. I think that there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to that. Like a lot of people think that because we have kind of, or at least some of us have more of a flat effect, like our faces don't often show our emotions. We actually do experience a lot of emotion, and so I got teased for that a lot. And despite like just crying for a few minutes and getting over, whatever it was and moving on, like that was a big like point of contention for me and the kids around me. Like I would have a meltdown, and I was just teased for it. um, I was also harassed and told that I wasn't mature enough to have like certain friends and certain friend groups that I was trying to be a part of and mimic and just try to fit in. I also went through something called precocious puberty when I was about 10 years old. It
Wow.
means that I went through puberty like very quickly, very shortly, and I just stopped growing from there. So I'm still like 4'10", and I'm still very small basically. And so throughout all of school, I would get teased for like not growing up. You know what I mean? And that just kind of added to the other things like with the crying and people thinking I was immature. And yeah, so those were the biggest issues for me.
Wow.
Yeah. um so yeah, those are the main things. I also tried to be very polite. I was encouraged to be polite um and kind at home, and we just had a very open-minded home where I grew up. And so even at school, I was very kind and submissive, and would try to um, I would try to just fit in, and it would be really difficult. I would often sit alone by myself or at the edge of a table at lunch because I didn't quite fit in with any of the groups. And so it was just like a really lonely like time in my life. Yeah,
Uh, I can understand what you're saying, how you felt because I used to I used to eat at lunch in school. Most of the times I like to eat at school at lunch, and I prefer it that way because I didn't have to deal with people that much. And I used to be bullied a lot, messed with a lot, to the point that I had to change schools like three times from
that's
what is
awful.
yeah, yeah, no. To the time to I used to be messed with a lot, and when I got into a fight with a kid, the that used to tease me, that I used to have issues with. We had a fight. He beat me, and I tried to fight back. And I remember that after we got suspended, 2 weeks after that semester, starting in sixth grade, my mom changed me to another school, a very small school, but the bullying just kept going. Especially where there was a girl who was the principal's granddaughter in that school where I went to sixth grade only, and called me names, and I fought back by saying something back to her, and she went to the office to play the victim and blame me. And the principal called me a bully when I just defended myself, and her mother, who also worked there, tried to intimidate me in some way by trying to say that her dad was like 6'4", and I was like 12 years old when that happened.
Yeah, that's not acceptable to me. Like that's very unacceptable behavior. And I understand. I maybe kind of the opposite. Like I had a bully specifically that would gaslight me. She would bully me in private, and then like I would have like mood swings or feel really bad about it and tell teachers, and she would be like, "No, I never did that. I never did that, right, Becca?" Like like trying to get me to get her out of trouble, and like that was really difficult because I didn't understand, and of course we don't. Like we're just kids trying, we're still like trying to figure out our own brains, and here these people are being mean to us.
Well, in high school, for me, things the bullying kept going, especially by a tree of girls that were very mean girls, and the bullying got so bad that I had to miss my senior prom.
I am so sorry. You deserve so much better, truly.
But wait a minute. So let me ask you: have you ever been like a? Did someone ever like make a false accusation against you as an autistic person, even in school?
No, um no, but I did have one fight in school. I had been in a gasoline fire accident. I had burned half of my leg basically, and it's
Oof.
still like scarred really bad. And like the burn was so bad that it kept me out of school for a quarter of the year. Everybody thought that I was gone, or there was just a lot of rumors going around about me. So when I finally got there, I spent that year wearing slippers to school because I couldn't put shoes on. Um, because it was the lower half of my leg and all over my foot. And I was teased a lot for that. And one girl teased me for it, and I finally fought back. Like that was the only time in school that I fought back against my bully, and they ended up getting suspended, not me. So it kind of felt nice. It was just like the one and only time that I got a win.
Well, let's say I was lender, and I was a victim of a false accusation in school, which led me to miss my prom. Okay, you know what happened in Virginia Tech back in 2007?
Yeah,
Well, that shooting basically. Well, they say that was going to do like at my senior prom, which turned out to be a lie. And I remember that time back in that was in 2009, and there was a meeting at the library. I had to come with my parents, the principal, the dean of discipline, the one who give you like a counselor who give you orientation, and some kids, including a few of them who used to tease me, bully me, or mess with me, and their parents. Uh, Thankfully, nothing happened. Uh, Thankfully, nothing happened because they couldn't prove anything. And even though it happened 17 years ago, and I managed to like let it go, move on with my life, that scars remain. If that makes any sense. And that's
of course it does.
and I said after that I said no way, I'm not going to my prom. Do I regret missing it? No, because I enjoyed that junior prom. What gives me that guarantee I would have enjoyed my prom, especially when they did something like that.
That's absolutely horrifying. Like I can't even imagine like going through something like that. You certainly deserve better from the people around you, and the adults should have believed you. But I do know, back in those days after things like Columbine and stuff like that was taken way very seriously, and I don't want to say way too seriously. Like obviously bad things happened, and schools had to react to it, but they should also, take into account like the realisticness of that situation. And I'm sorry that you were a victim of that.
Thank you. And all the stuff that I mentioned it happened in a school in Puerto Rico where I moved when I was okay.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, even after I finished high school, there was another girl from school that almost ruined my life with something even worse. But thankfully, nothing happened because it was proven to be a lie. And then 2 months after that happened, the girl sent me uh, a message on social media apologizing. And I said, apologizing like this because you just don't play with someone else's life with a lie like that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that's awful. Absolutely.
Okay. Now let's go back. You have like you have kids also with kids with autism, right?
Yes, I do. I have children with autism and some with dual diagnosis. So they have ADHD or autism and ADHD. And they range in age now from 14 to 22. So mostly they're out of school, but their experiences are very fresh for me.
Okay. And so far, what are how what are like the your biggest like fears, concerns, or challenges as as a mother of autistic children?
Well, of course, we look back on our lives and we don't want them to go through what we went through. And though there were many things that I did not mention today, like there's definitely worse things that could happen to them. And of course, as a mom, I worry about that. My youngest is mostly nonverbal and is a Gestalt learning processor, so he has a different way of speaking and communicating with the world. So I always worry that he's not able to explain if something bad happens to him. But um, I also worry about like when I'm gone because my children, they do range from higher support needs and more severe autistic traits to lower support needs and more high masking, like I am. Um, I do not like the high functioning label. If you've ever seen my videos, you know that. Um, because I feel like no matter where we are on the spectrum, we all struggle to function. And that rings true for my family, for me and my children, um, who struggle greatly in some areas and not in others, and they're each their own person, so they experience their autism and or ADHD very differently. um, but we all have like the same struggles with like anxiety and social issues and monotropism. So I really just hope that there is like a more accepting world on the other side for them, and that no matter what, when they grow up, I just want them to be happy. So I just I really advocate, when it comes to them and all autistics out there, I really advocate for better programs, better housing assistance, better financial assistance, better employment training, better access to all of those things, better access to a community, and just I want that for my children.
Okay. Uh, and tell me, so when did you start like making this autism content? You start doing it because like you want to create like awareness. How you?
Yes. Yeah, I started doing it because I wanted to share my journey, and I really needed a place. I really needed community. Um like I said, when I first got diagnosed, it was really hard on me and I felt alone, and like I just needed that community. And but also it kind of turned into advocacy as well, not just sharing my journey with late diagnosed autism and like how that affects me, and like what autism looks like for those of us who are high masking. Because like I said, in my autism journey, I did learn that there are a lot of people who are undiagnosed and have no idea, who are being diagnosed every day and just learning about their autism. And there's so many more people like me, and I just wanted to share my journey in hopes that they found that. But I also wanted to advocate, especially for, not, I guess not just autistics, but for the disabled community as well, because families with disabled children like my own struggle so bad, financially, food wise, with just so many things. There's just so many things, and it's so hard to get in for an assessment. In some places it can be up to 3 years before you see a specialist to get diagnosed with autism. And that was true for my youngest. Like, it took many years for him to get his reassessment done, and I feel like that's, number one, ridiculous. Number two, unacceptable. I think that there needs to be better awareness and better options offered to autistic people to help support a healthy and happy life.
Okay. And tell me, what signs like gave you like an indication that your children were autistic?
So it's interesting because my older two are more higher masking, and are a lot like me, so I really didn't notice because I'm a late diagnosed autistic. So I really didn't notice, but the school did. The school realized and had somebody, had a specialist come in and diagnose them and offer different services like speech therapy or occupational, that sort of thing. And so I was like really blown away, just like really surprised by their diagnosis. And They didn't need a whole lot of supports, but they did need some, and they needed more grace at home and more understanding from us. And so it really did help us. Like it just really opened my eyes to like my children's needs. And then for my younger two, they were more on they had more severe traits and higher support needs. So it was clearer earlier on. While my older children were diagnosed in like middle school, like early middle school, my younger kids were caught by the time they were 2 or 3 years old, 4 years old. And that's when they got their like they went through the official process of getting an assessment from like a child psychologist or psychiatrist, like someone who specializes in autism. And my youngest even went to ABA as well for a short time.
Okay, but wow, imagine, I can't believe that you say that it takes like sometimes 3 years to get like a diagnosis test, and you have to wait a long time, over a year or years, to have your youngest son to get test, to get diagnosed. And how hard can, knowing that knowing that your one of your kids needs help, that needs to get diagnosed, so you have a better idea what's going on with him, what's wrong, and not able to get a test, and you have to wait a lot of a lot of months, years. How hard and how frustrating can be that?
Very frustrating, so frustrating. And not only that, like the worry and the not knowing, because at that point you're like, I do see the signs. And you go to the doctor, right? So I told the doctor, I brought a list. I was like, these are the signs that I see in my child. I think he might be autistic. And so they were like, yes, yes, we'll get you a referral. Then, they give you a referral to the specialist, and you have to wait so long. So while that doctor was like, yeah, those are all signs of autism, and yes, I see them, I agree with you, but we need a concrete from a specialist. Like that part frustrated me, because I was like, you're a doctor, you see these, you're a pediatrician at that, you're a children's doctor, so you see these things in kids all the time. Why can't he get a diagnosis and start, getting therapies and assistance? But it wasn't, in my world it would be that easy. So it did take a couple of years for us to just get a call back and get scheduled in with the specialist at a place that was called the Autism Clinic. So they only specialized in autism and autism therapies. So like that was a good thing, thinking like, yay, he's gonna be going to like the best specialist, the best place, the where the most experts are on this particular subject. I felt relief knowing that. But when it finally came to, the assessment years later, like we had already gone through like that, like I said, that acceptance and grieving process, and trying to, figure out like, but also like some of us were holding out hope that like maybe we were wrong. So it was also it was both a surprise and not when he was officially diagnosed and offered services. um the wait was just like an emotional roller coaster. It really was.
Okay, and you think that like in that aspect, like the, how can I say it? Like the health system must improve, because to wait for a couple of years to get an autism diagnosis, that's a lot. And some, correct me if I'm wrong, not that many people can wait that long. So you think the system, the health system, the system, however you want to say, must improve in that area?
it does need to improve, and it needs to improve like yesterday. Because when you're young and you're autistic, that is your time for getting help. If you struggle with speech and all these other issues, that is your chance to get the help that you need. And to have to wait and watch those years go by, I mean, there's only so much that we can do as parents, even and especially back then when there wasn't as many there wasn't TikTok with autistic content creators talking about this. There wasn't, I remember like reading blogs about, from autism moms and autistic people, but there wasn't like, there wasn't a lot of autistic content or like things to tell us what to do. Um, and with somebody who was struggling, like that couldn't speak and had like very narrow interests and eating interests, like it was just a very difficult time. So yeah, they really do need to get better at this, and not just for children, but adults as well, and not just for the diagnostic process, but the services that they offer. Because after you get diagnosed, you also have to wait for various referrals sometimes, and even if you don't have to wait for the referral to be approved by the insurance company, you have to wait to get into these services like speech therapy, occupational therapy, and for some people, ABA therapy is something that they want to get into. Um, and especially ABA specifically can take a long time to get in with as well, because there are so many. It's such a limited profession, and and at that time especially there were so few places offering that kind of service, so it was just very frustrating. But today we still see the same thing, especially not just for children but adults. Like adults struggle to get their assessment, and if they don't have insurance, it's a $2,000 assessment all day long, anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 that I've seen, which is expensive for anybody, even if you have the ability to I don't know. But most autistic people struggle financially, and to think like for them to officially get their diagnosis recognized, like, is just, that financial hurdle is there, is really distressing to me. And also the other things that go along with that, like needing the other services like help with housing, help with employment, help with health care, food assistance. Like, it's just, even whether you're a child or an adult, they miss the mark in so many ways.
Wow, can't believe what I heard. Really, an assessment test can cost like over $1,000.
Yes, yeah, especially for adult assessments. And so many adults are realizing now, that they're either ADHD or autistic. And I feel like, when I was on like Facebook and stuff, like there were a lot of like advertisements for like getting diagnosed with ADHD, like that. I don't know why that's so much more accessible and easier to get a diagnosis for, but for adults to get diagnosed with autism, it's ridiculously expensive. And talking to people in multiple countries, it's a long wait time as well. And that's unacceptable for people who desperately need help now.
Oh, okay. And and there's another question here. Like, do you think like schools do a good job helping autistic students, or you think that they have or they must improve?
So I think it really depends on the school. Some schools have a lot of resources for neurodivergent children, for disabled children. Some schools have really good special education resources, and so no, they're really well equipped to handle autistic children and other disabilities. But then there's a lot of schools, especially those in rural areas, and this goes for many countries, not just America. But schools in rural areas are not really equipped to handle autistic children. Like my youngest, for example, we had to drive him half an hour to and from every day to a school much further away because the one nearest to us didn't have a special education department at all. um,
Oh,
he was the reason that they got a special education department. And lo and behold, over the years, that need grew and more special needs children ended up in that special education program. And just watching that happen and the classroom, evolve, like getting more things like sensory swings and sensory rooms and becoming more neurodivergent affirming, I should say. Um, just watching that happen made me realize that there are so many children out there not getting those things, and that we definitely need more for the kids. The schools are not doing a good enough job, and it's not necessarily that the schools aren't doing a good enough job with that. It's that they do not have the funding, and the government needs to provide that funding for um, for the schools to be able to help those kids. As far as bullying goes, I think it's gotten better since we have grown up. I mean, when we were growing up, we were just kind of told like, it's just school. Once school's over, you'll forget about it. Or kids are mean, so just kind of deal with it, brush it off your shoulder. But we know today that it's actually very detrimental to neurodivergent children to deal with bullying. And I experienced this with myself. You've experienced this yourself. I've helped with my children who have gone through different bits of bullying. Um, no, they are not meeting the mark when it comes to that, and not just for neurodivergent children, but neurotypical kids as well. Like bullying in general is still a very, very big issue in schools today.
yes, I can understand what you said, and I understand the bullying part. Well, I understand that because we both went through it, and some schools they defend the autistic student, but so they don't, and I know this by experience. But I also think that uh, parents also should get more involved
Yes,
into raising their children better, to teach them principles and values, so they don't go around like bullying other students and other classmates, including those who are autistic. Do you agree with that?
110%. I don't think it's, I do think, a lot of it is on the school, because when the bullying happens, it's happening in school, but not always. Sometimes it's happening after school or on the buses. And no matter where it's happening, it is up to the parents to teach their children to be kind. And I don't think that's too much to ask of parents, to just teach your kid to be kind to flipping everybody. Just be nice to those in need. Offer a shoulder when you can. Like it's not that hard. um and I do agree, yeah, it does. A lot of fault lies with parents. They do need to do they need to work harder to ensure that their children understand different aspects of humankind, not just disabilities, but things like race and religion. I think it's I think parents should work harder to explain those things to children and help them understand why they need to be kind and accepting, and yeah, just go from there.
Okay, yes, I agree with you, and I know this because, for example, I used to be bullied by a girl who was a troublemaker, who was a I don't know what I don't want to say a head case, but a a big trouble case. And this girl was put on probation by the school 4 straight years for bad behavior. And it started when I report her for bullying me, for harassing me back in ninth grade. I put her on probation for that, but it didn't teach her anything because she was put on probation from the ninth grade all the way to her senior year. So that's 4 straight years on probation for her
Yeah.
bad acts. And I don't know if you ever heard a case about that, but I think some case that's on her for not taking the authority seriously. And I think the mother should have done more. So I can understand where you're going.
Yeah, her mother should have done more, and you deserved better support as well. Like, for sure, on both sides.
Okay, let's read a comment. It says Mongo Billy says we need more physicians qualified to diagnose autism. I agree with that. And it
Definitely.
says, and Mongo Billy also says here, years waiting is absolutely detrimental to the people that need that service, that need the services only available at diagnosis. Yeah, it can be very detrimental.
Yes, and he makes a good point that these services are only available after diagnosis, or only available if a referral is approved by the insurance company. And that is such a hurdle for so many people, um, especially if you have state insurance where it takes a lot longer to get into these services and you're very limited, but also for paid insurance, whether that's through your job or you pay for it yourself. There's high premiums that you have to continue to pay while you're waiting for these services to happen, and if you want your insurance to cover it, you're paying for your insurance, like a lot of money out of pocket for potentially years before you get seen, and then you have to pay even more to be seen. um, so it's just like it's uh such an expensive undertaking in all ways for all people. um so yeah, it is very detrimental in my opinion.
Oh, okay. Uh, so tell me, what do you think that should happen so that what do you think that schools should do to help autistic students, and what should the health system should do to improve in these cases that we talk about?
Well, with the school systems, I think that they should educate children in general, because, like you and I talked about, we can't always rely on parents to educate their children about acceptance and kindness. And I think schools should maybe focus on programs that would teach all of the children to be accepting and kind to others. And um, I don't know about you, but growing up in Michigan, at our schools, we also had something called safety patrols, or safety patrol officers. And that sounds like a fancy thing, but it was actually like older children looking out for the younger kids. So like if we were walking home, they would keep us on a safe path, make sure we stayed on the sidewalk. If we were in the hallways, sometimes they would stop bullying or report it to a teacher or whatever. And even though that they can't do much, I think that that kind of program has disappeared from the schools entirely, and it helped create like a sense of responsibility, a sense of duty to help foster a safer and better environment for kids. So I wish that they would bring back programs like that. And I also think that the schools should do a better job at protecting their needy children, the children that need more protection, more help, be that uh, because they're disabled, autistic, neurodivergent, or their family is in a bind and needs assistance. I think the school should have more social workers available and just more help all around to all kids.
Yeah, I would know that the health system has to improve, must improve to help people
Yes,
in need after they get a diagnosis. The schools must do better, have to do better. They can do better to help these needy children, to help these autistic children more, and the parents, not only the parents of the autistic children, but the parents of the neurotypical children also can do better. Okay.
yes, yep. They can do better at teaching their kids how to be kind and, just how to be friends with kids who need friends. I think that was, an issue for us growing up that, our parents didn't really encourage us to be friends with, to see the kids that need help and be friends with them. Um, and I was in a more open household. Like we were taught kindness and acceptance, and we were taught about multiple religions and politics and um, orientations and whatever. So we were very open and accepting and loving and kind in general. Um, but not everybody has that, and even my parents didn't really reach out and teach me how to be a friend to those kids that need a friend. Like I was that kid, but you know I think about that as well and think that maybe more parents could do that for their children too.
Uh, okay, Becca. Before we end this, is there any message that you would like to send to your followers?
um Well, I just want to thank everybody for checking out our interview and checking out your page. I think you sharing stories like this is really helpful to the community. Um, and I just want to tell everybody out there who is waiting on an autism diagnosis, who is raising autistic children, who is just dealing with their new diagnosis or going through the journey, trying to just live in this very expensive, chaotic world that we have today, to just, keep your head up, keep going, do what you think is right, do the best that you can. And at the end of the day, the best that you can do is the best that you can do. And give yourself a little grace.
Okay. Well, so anyway, we can end it here. So, Becca, thank you for accepting me. Thank you for being my channel. Thank you for being my space as well. The best of luck. It was great to hear your story, and it was great talking to you.
Thanks for letting me share, and it was good talking with you too. I hope to see you around, and take care, my friend.
Okay, thank you too. Well, follow me for more content and more interviews with uh, autism content creators and autistic people, including Becca, who was my guest here today. So, bye, Becca.
Bye.